The bright morning sun of Santa Monica streamed through the window, bathing Deborah Clark's bedroom in a golden light. Even before her alarm clock rang, she was already awake, checking her emails. As the marketing director for A Victory Promotions, a sports marketing company, these early morning hours were the quietest and most focused time of her day. "Mom, are you up?" her son's voice called from the hallway, making Deborah smile. Jason had turned 13, but he was still the sweet child who cared about his mother's morning routine. "I'm up, Jason. I'm preparing breakfast, so come down in a little while." Deborah stood up and looked out the window. Under the blue California sky, she could see the small house she had purchased 5 years ago after her divorce. It wasn't spacious, but it was just the right size for her and her son. While cooking pancakes in the kitchen, Jason came bounding down the stairs with a basketball in his arms. He hadn't reached his full height yet and was smaller than other children his age, but his bright brown eyes and smile told the story of his energy and passion. "Mom, did you see the Lakers game yesterday? It was amazing. LeBron's pass to Davis for that alley-oop." Jason's eyes shone as he moved his hands excitedly, recreating the scene from the game. Deborah smiled in response to her son's enthusiasm as she plated the pancakes. "Unfortunately, I could only watch part of it because of a meeting. But I did check the highlights. It really was incredible." At the breakfast table, Jason was bubbling with talk about the NBA as usual. While listening to her son, Deborah could feel how much he loved basketball, just like his father, Robert. Their divorce hadn't been amicable, but at least Robert had left Jason with a love for basketball. "Oh, by the way, Grandma called," Jason said as he poured syrup over his pancakes. "She said she's coming this weekend." Deborah paused for a moment and took a deep breath. Her relationship with her mother, Patricia, was complicated. Her mother interfered in every aspect of Deborah's life and, especially after the divorce, didn't even try to hide her "I told you so" attitude. "I see. Just Grandma?" "No, Aunt Carol and Brandon are coming too." Deborah inwardly sighed. Her sister Carol continued to act like the princess of the family. And her son Brandon, at 15, had the build and confidence of an athlete. Family gatherings always revolved around Carol and Brandon, with Patricia clearly favoring the two. "I see. I'll get ready," Deborah answered, maintaining her composure. After seeing Jason off to school, Deborah was preparing to head to the office. As she fixed her hair in front of the mirror, thinking about the upcoming family visit, the familiar tension spread through her chest. Whenever her mother and sister visited, her choices and lifestyle became targets for criticism. She was often compared to Carol's perfect life. Her phone rang, and looking at the screen, she saw it was an email from a client. Deborah switched to professional mode and began her reply. At least in her work, she had confidence. After studying sports management in college and making continued efforts after her divorce, she had become a recognized figure in the industry. Deborah whispered to herself in the mirror, as if reminding herself, "Let's get through today." That afternoon, after finishing a meeting at the office, Deborah received a message from the Lakers' public relations department, one of her clients. It was an offer to give her VIP tickets to next week's NBA Finals as a token of appreciation for her work. It even included access to a player meet-and-greet event that was normally impossible to get. Deborah's heart raced. She could imagine how thrilled Jason would be. In fact, she already had an additional ticket, but she was keeping it a secret. She was planning to save the other ticket for Jason's best friend. It would be a great opportunity to deepen their friendship. When she got home, Jason had already finished his homework and was playing a basketball video game. He paused the game when he noticed Deborah had good news. "What happened?" "Something good." Deborah smiled and pulled the NBA Finals tickets from her bag. "What do you think these are?" Jason's eyes widened, and a look of disbelief crossed his face. "No way. NBA Finals. Are these real?" "They're a gift from a client. VIP seats and we get to meet the players." Jason jumped up and threw himself at his mother. "Mom, this is the best. I've been wanting to go forever. Deborah hugged him back. This is what she had been working hard for. The next afternoon, the doorbell suddenly rang. Patricia and Carol had arrived a day early. When Deborah opened the door, her mother Patricia stood there with an elegant scarf around her neck, and her sister Carol with a designer bag on her shoulder. Mom, Carol. Weren't you coming tomorrow? Plans changed, Patricia said as she entered the house. When are you going to move to a bigger place? Carol followed with Brandon, slightly wrinkling her nose. Really? It's about half the size of our house. Deborah said nothing and led them to the living room. Jason excitedly ran down the stairs, holding the NBA Finals tickets in his hand. Grandma, Aunt Carol, look. Mom got tickets to the NBA Finals. VIP seats and we get to meet the players. Deborah could feel the atmosphere in the room change. Her mother and sister's expressions froze, their eyes fixed on the tickets in Jason's hand. NBA? Isn't that violent sport too much for a child his age? Patricia stared at Jason. Deborah frowned. Mom, the NBA isn't a violent sport. And Jason is 13. That's plenty old enough. Carol snorted. But what would such a small child understand about the NBA? She placed her hand on Brandon's shoulder. Brandon is already the star of his school's basketball team. Isn't that right, Brandon? Brandon proudly puffed out his chest. We placed third in the state tournament. My coach says I could even aim for a scholarship when I get to high school. Jason shrank a bit but couldn't hide his excitement. I love it too. I know all the Lakers players' names and their scoring averages. Patricia exhaled softly. Knowing and understanding are different things, Jason. Carol turned to Deborah. How did you get tickets like that? VIP seats must cost a fortune. Her voice had a tinge of suspicion. It's work-related, Deborah answered briefly. They were given to me as a token of appreciation from a client. And? How did you get them? Carol pressed. Deborah tried to maintain her calm. The Lakers' PR campaign I'm in charge of was a huge success, so they gave them to me as a thank you. Patricia pursed her lips. Deborah, are you always working? Are you taking proper care of Jason? He needs a more stable environment. Mom, Deborah's voice contained a warning tone. Please don't criticize my parenting. Carol rose from the sofa and approached Jason. Can I see those tickets? Jason hesitated, then looked at his mother. Deborah gave a small shake of her head, but Jason had already handed the tickets to Carol. Brandon would understand basketball better, Carol said, taking the tickets and changing her expression. These are more suitable for Brandon. Patricia stood by Carol's side and peered at the tickets. Carol's right. Brandon is taller, better at sports, and has a stable home environment. Deborah stood up, trying to take back the tickets. Those are our tickets. Jason was looking forward to it. Carol took a step back and began toying with the tickets in her hand. They're wasted on a child like this. What could such a small, fragile child possibly understand? Carol, give those tickets back, Deborah's voice was low and dangerously calm. Brandon deserves them more, Carol suddenly raised her voice. He's so good at basketball, and he can't see a game. She grabbed the tickets with both hands and tore them in half right before their eyes. A frozen silence enveloped the room. Now no one can go, Carol had a triumphant smirk on her face. Tears welled up in Jason's eyes. Mom, I was looking forward to it so much. His voice was small and trembling. Deborah quietly took her son's hand. Her eyes burned with anger, but her voice was surprisingly steady. Get out. Deborah. Patricia exclaimed in surprise. We're family. How can you behave like this? Family. Deborah scoffed. This is not what family does. Get out. Right now. Carol tossed the torn pieces of the tickets onto the table. Fine, we'll leave. But arrange new tickets for Brandon. Your company can do that, right? I don't have any more, Deborah lied. She had no intention of telling anyone, especially them now, about the additional tickets. Patricia sighed. Deborah, you've always been stubborn. Can't you think about your nephew's happiness over your own child's? Get out, Deborah's voice was icy cold. Jason silently held his mother's hand tightly. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he was desperately trying to suppress his sobs. Patricia and Carol left with triumphant expressions. Brandon gave his cousin Jason an apologetic look for a moment but quickly followed his mother. When the front door closed, Deborah finally let her shoulders drop as if the tension had been released. She knelt down to be at eye level with her son. Jason, I'm so sorry, she gently wiped her son's tears. Don't pay attention to what they said. You're a wonderful boy. Jason nodded through his tears. I know, Mom. But, the tickets. Deborah hugged her son. Don't worry. I'll figure something out. Alone in the room with Jason, anger and sadness swirled in Deborah's heart. She had endured criticism and interference from her family before, but this time was unforgivable. How could family take away her son's dream and hope? After Jason had calmed down and gone back to his room, Deborah took out the additional tickets she had been hiding in her bag. With a determined expression, she picked up her cell phone and dialed a number. Lisa? It's Deborah. I need a favor. She was calling Lisa, her friend and also the Lakers' PR representative. You won't believe what just happened. Deborah explained everything, and Lisa responded with a mixture of sympathy and anger. Deborah, don't worry. I'll talk to the team. I'm sure we can do something. After hanging up, Deborah stared out the window. In her mind, a plan was already beginning to take shape. Deborah's workplace, Victory Promotions, was on the 20th floor of a downtown high-rise. In a spacious glass-walled conference room, Deborah sat face-to-face with Lisa Johnson. Lisa was the Lakers' PR representative and also a friend from college. I just can't believe it, Lisa said, gripping her coffee cup with both hands. That your own sister would do something like that. Deborah smiled tiredly. How hurt Jason was. Her voice trembled slightly. He had been looking forward to this game so much. Lisa's expression became serious. But you still have the extra tickets, right? You could use those. Of course I will, Deborah nodded. But I think my mother and sister might try something. Knowing them, they might try to repair the torn tickets and use them. In that case, Lisa said thoughtfully, we can invalidate the serial numbers on the torn tickets and issue new ones. That way, they won't be able to get in with the torn tickets. The light returned to Deborah's face. You can do that? Of course, Lisa answered confidently. I'll contact the person in charge. And she paused as if considering something. I'm going to tell the players about this. They might be able to do something. Lisa. Deborah was filled with gratitude. Thank you. Don't mention it, Lisa squeezed her hand. That's what friendship is. Besides, the players would be happy to help a passionate fan like Jason. That night, after Deborah had put Jason to bed, her phone rang. It was Lisa. Deborah, you won't believe it. Lisa's voice was bubbling with excitement. The players heard Jason's story and they're planning a special surprise. They want to invite Jason to the locker room before the game. And the captain says he'll present him with a signed uniform. Deborah expressed her gratitude while holding back tears. Her recent life had been a series of difficulties, the divorce from Robert, criticism from her mother and sister, and the challenge of balancing work and parenting. But moments like this, when she felt the warmth of people, were truly heartwarming. 3 days before the game, Deborah continued to ignore calls from her mother. And then, finally, game day arrived. Ready? Deborah asked, adjusting Jason's NBA cap. He had been bouncing around the room excitedly all morning. Yes. Jason answered with a beaming smile. Can we really go? Are the tickets okay? Deborah showed her son the tickets she was holding. Of course. These are the real tickets. Let's go. When they arrived at the Staples Center parking lot, the venue was already bustling with fans. People wearing Lakers purple and gold uniforms were waiting to enter, their chests swelling with anticipation. As Deborah and Jason headed toward the VIP entrance, Lisa came to greet them. I've been waiting for you. She hugged them both with a smile. We've made special preparations. I really appreciate it, Lisa. Deborah patted her friend's shoulder lightly. Lisa began to guide them to the VIP area. Just then, Deborah's cell phone rang, and her mother's name was displayed on the screen. She ignored the call at first, but it immediately started ringing again. It might be something important. Deborah reluctantly answered the phone. Hello? Deborah. Patricia's voice was mixed with anger and panic. What is going on? We can't get in. What do you mean? Deborah replied calmly. You know what I'm talking about. The tickets. We carefully repaired the torn tickets, but the attendant says they're invalid. Deborah felt a moment of satisfaction. Lisa's plan had worked. Oh, really? That's too bad. Deborah. Now it was Carol's voice. She had apparently snatched the phone from their mother. What are you going to do about this? Brandon is crying. Is that so? My son was crying too. When you tore up the tickets, Deborah's voice was cold. After a moment of silence, Carol's voice was trembling. Deborah, please. I had those tickets invalidated, Deborah said matter-of-factly. I thought you might try something. I had the real tickets separately. On the other end of the phone, she could tell the two were speechless. Patricia took the phone again. Her voice sounded weaker than Deborah had ever heard it. Deborah, please, we were wrong. We've been wrong all along, Patricia continued. Not respecting your choices, always favoring Carol. I'm truly sorry. Brandon was really looking forward to it. Carol's voice came from a distance. Please at least let Brandon in. I'm really sorry. Deborah thought for a moment and looked at Lisa, who was approaching to say something. Wait outside, Deborah said. Meet me at the west entrance in 30 minutes. Really? Patricia's voice was full of hope. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. After hanging up, Deborah turned to Lisa. Is there a way to let them in? Lisa smiled. Actually, the players anticipated this. They had prepared another set of passes. But... She hesitated. Are you really forgiving them? Deborah took a deep breath. I'm not forgiving them. But this is something I want to show my son. The difference between forgiveness and choosing the high road. Jason had been silently listening to his mother's conversation. His eyes reflected a mix of confusion and expectation. Mom, are Grandma and the others really coming? He asked in a small voice. Yes, Deborah stroked her son's head. Sometimes people make mistakes, but when they sincerely apologize, it's important to give them another chance. 30 minutes later, Deborah and Lisa headed to the west entrance. There stood Patricia, Carol, and Brandon with dejected expressions. Brandon's eyes were red and swollen, clearly showing he had been crying. Deborah. Patricia stepped forward. I'm truly sorry. Carol also bowed her head. My behavior was unforgivable. Tearing up Jason's tickets and saying such horrible things. I'm really sorry. Surprisingly, Brandon suddenly raised his voice toward his mother. Why couldn't you do this from the beginning? Tearing up Jason's tickets was terrible. His voice was mixed with anger and shame. Carol seemed surprised by her son's outburst and was at a loss for words. Patricia likewise had a complex expression on her face. After staring at the two of them for a moment, Deborah quietly said, "It's important that you've acknowledged your mistakes. Brandon can't enter." Lisa called a staff member and handed Brandon a special pass. "This pass will also allow you to participate in the player meet and greet," she explained. "But what about us?" Carol asked. "You two wait in the VIP lounge," Deborah answered calmly. "Don't interfere with the children's time with the players." Patricia and Carol nodded, repeating words of gratitude. When Deborah, Jason, and Brandon were escorted to the special backstage area, the players welcomed them. The captain smiled at Jason and handed him a signed ball. "I heard your story," he said to Jason. "A true fan isn't measured by height, but by what's in here." He pointed to his heart. Jason's eyes were shining. Brandon was equally excited but kept glancing at his cousin as if wanting to say something. "Jason," Brandon said quietly. "I'm sorry. I couldn't stop my mom when she said those things." Jason shrugged. "Don't worry about it," he smiled. "Let's have the best time today, the two of us." Brandon nodded happily. Before the game started, the players invited Jason and Brandon onto the court and gave them a special shooting practice session. The two boys were having an experience they would never forget. Sitting in the stands, Deborah still felt anger toward her mother and sister, but also a sense of satisfaction. Today, her son was not only watching a fantastic game but also learning an important life lesson. As game time approached, the stadium filled with cheers and excitement. Seeing her son smile, Deborah felt that everything had been worth it for this moment. The game was a breathtaking nail-biter. In the final quarter, with just 10 seconds remaining, the Lakers hit a three-pointer to take the lead, and the entire stadium erupted in cheers. Jason and Brandon jumped up in excitement, giving each other high fives. After the game, as promised, there was a special time to meet with the players. The two boys received autographs from their idols, took commemorative photos, and even received a short basketball lesson. Deborah captured all these moments in photos and uploaded them to social media. "That was the best night ever," Jason said excitedly in the car on the way home. "Remember that shot in the last 10 seconds? Unbelievable." Brandon was equally excited. "The captain taught us how to make passes. I'll never get another opportunity like this to learn from pros." The two boys were eagerly reliving the game in the back seat. Deborah looked at them through the rearview mirror and smiled. Her mother Patricia sat quietly in the passenger seat next to her. Carol had parked in a different lot and was following in her own car. "Deborah," Patricia said in a small voice. "Thank you for today. I'm grateful for your generosity." Deborah answered, keeping her eyes on the road. "I did it for Jason and Brandon. I'm glad they enjoyed themselves." When they arrived home, Carol soon parked her car in the lot as well. Everyone gathered in the living room, and the boys continued talking about the game, their excitement still palpable. Their smartphones began to buzz with notifications one after another. The photos Deborah had uploaded had been shared on the Lakers' official account. The pictures showed Jason and Brandon smiling, surrounded by players, with the caption, "A special night with special fans." "Look. We're on the Lakers' official account," Brandon exclaimed in surprise. But the moment of joy didn't last long. The expressions on Patricia and Carol's faces suddenly clouded over. "Why would you do this?" Carol suddenly raised her voice. "You're completely excluding us, making yourself look like the good person." "What are you talking about?" Deborah was confused. "This social media post." Carol waved her smartphone. "You've posted pictures of the children, but not a single one of us. It's like we don't exist." Patricia also wore a displeased expression. "Deborah, you're shaming us. Is that what you want to say? Look how generous I am, and how terrible they are." Deborah looked at the two of them with an incredulous expression. "I was simply recording memories for the children. I didn't even think about you." "That's exactly it. Carol raised her voice even more. You don't think about us at all. To treat us this way. As the atmosphere in the house began to tense again, Brandon suddenly stood up. Mom, stop it, he shouted at his mother. Why are you ruining everything again? Carol was surprised by her son's reaction and was at a loss for words. Mom, Grandma, Brandon continued. Why didn't you think about my feelings then? Both Jason and I were looking forward to it. Tears glistened in his eyes. The room fell silent. Deborah said quietly, I never thought I would be treated this way by family for tickets I received from a client. Her voice was calm, but behind it was years of pain. My efforts and achievements have always been minimized, and I've always been told Carol is better. Even these tickets were the result of my work. Jason stood next to his mother and held her hand. Actually. Brandon hesitated as he spoke. Jason and I have been exchanging secret text messages. We're actually good friends. All eyes in the room turned to Brandon. Because Mom and Grandma always speak badly about Jason, I couldn't say anything, but... Brandon continued. I just wanted to play basketball with Jason, so why do this? His voice trembled, and tears spilled from his eyes. Carol was speechless at her son's confession. Patricia likewise sat deeply sunken into the sofa. I'm truly sorry, Carol said slowly, this time in a sincere voice. I was jealous. Deborah has always been strong, forging her own path. I've always relied on Mother. Patricia looked up. Tears were in her eyes. I've treated you unfairly. I was too protective of Carol and took Deborah's strength for granted. Blood ties alone don't make a family, Deborah said quietly. Respecting and loving each other is what makes a family bond. As the night went on, a gentle atmosphere unlike any before flowed through the living room. Even after the children had gone to sleep, the adults opened their hearts and talked sincerely for the first time in a long while. Patricia acknowledged her mistakes, and Carol honestly confessed her jealousy and anxiety. Deborah also tried to understand their feelings. It would take time to fully repair the damaged relationships. But it was certain that, on this night, the first step had been taken. As Deborah lay in bed, she reflected on the day. The children's smiles, the confrontation and slight reconciliation with her mother and sister. And above all, the important lesson she had been able to convey to her son. Life is sometimes unfair, and people make mistakes. But being able to choose the high road and show the strength of forgiveness was a significant growth for her as well. A month passed, and the early summer sunshine of Santa Monica brightly illuminated Deborah's garden. The aroma of smoke rising from the barbecue grill hung in the air, and Jason and Brandon ran around the garden with basketballs in hand. Nice shot. Brandon called out to Jason. In this month, the relationship between the cousins had changed remarkably. They no longer needed to contact each other in secret and frequently visited each other's homes on weekends. Deborah watched from the terrace while pouring lemonade. Her mother Patricia sat beside her. Patricia's attitude had also changed. She respected her daughter's choices and genuinely listened to Deborah's words. Deborah, Patricia said quietly. The son you've raised is wonderful. I just hadn't seen it. Deborah smiled. Her relationship with her mother hadn't become perfect overnight, but there were clear signs of improvement. Thank you, Mom. On the opposite side of the garden, Carol was in charge of the grill. She had begun weekly sessions with a counselor. It wasn't easy to confront the roots of her sense of entitlement and anxiety, but she was making an effort. Her relationship with Brandon was also gradually becoming healthier. Dinner's ready. Carol called out. The arrogance had disappeared from her voice, replaced by gentleness. During the meal, Deborah talked about her work. Her contract with the NBA had expanded further, and her career had reached new heights. And more than anything, she felt that by overcoming this difficulty, she had been able to show her son an important lesson. I received tickets for next season's opening game, Deborah said at the end of the meal. Let's all go as a family this time. A bright atmosphere spread through the room. Patricia nodded happily, and Carol showed a grateful smile. The children jumped up from their seats in excitement. That night, alone, Deborah went out to the garden and looked up at the starry sky. The pain she had carried for years wasn't completely healed yet, but she was certainly walking the path of healing. She had learned that her strength lay not only in her ability to face difficulties but also in her capacity to forgive and love. The next morning, as Deborah was preparing for work, Jason approached her. "Mom, yesterday was so much fun," he said. "Grandma and Aunt Carol have changed, haven't they?" Deborah gently stroked her son's hair. "People can change, Jason. But it takes time, and it's important for them to decide to change themselves." "Have we become a real family?" Jason asked with a serious expression. "A real family is one that overcomes difficulties and grows together," Deborah smiled softly. "We're just beginning to learn that." The morning sun streaming through the window bathed the room in gold, heralding the start of a new day. Deborah hugged Jason, quietly hoping that their new family story would take another step forward from here.